So last class, I think, last factor what we discussed was, before this, it was metabolism. Okay, I think I discussed about this. Drugs which are extensively metabolized may not be a good candidate for sustained release. That's what I was telling you. So I just gave you the example of certain drugs which undergo extensive metabolism in the wall of the intestine. For example, alpranolol was one such drug, and levodopa was another drug which I exemplified. So these are the drugs which, if at all they are formulated as a sustained release, they are prone to exhibit lesser bioavailability when compared to the conventional forms. So the moral of the story is that, okay, if the drug undergoes extensive first pass metabolism, metabolism in the GI tract, okay, such drugs are not good candidates for SR. That was the final conclusion what I was able to draw. Now in this class, starting with what you can call it as, what are the physicochemical factors that often govern what you can call it as selection of the drug candidates. Okay, there are different factors as you can see. One is the dose size, the other is the ionization, pKa, aqueous solubility, all come together, and the third is what you can call it as partition coefficient, and the last is stability of the drug in the GI tract. Anybody has any idea about the size of the dose, which is ideal size? We just spoke about that few days back.
1000 mg, sir.
Yeah, 1000 mg. Good ma. Okay. So earlier what used to happen is, as you can see, okay, a single dose. This is what is an ideal dose size. A dose size of 0.5 to 1 gram is considered ideal to be what you can call it as for any oral administration. In fact, not only for sustain, okay, for any oral dosage form in general, what you can call it as this particular dose is suitable. So the same dose is applicable for formulating when you're formulating a sustained release dosage form or drug delivery system, what you can call it as controlled release drug delivery systems. Okay, the same dose size is applicable. So preferably it should be less than 1 gram. Okay, please remember the dose should be less than 1 gram. And the other factors which have to be considered, okay, or for example, especially is the margin of safety. Okay, margin of safety involved in administration of a large dose, especially with the drugs with narrow therapeutic index. So I discussed about this, what you mean by therapeutic window. Yes, all of you know what is a therapeutic window? Yes? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So you are aware of the therapeutic window? So when you just see, for
Yes.
example, if people have written down the figure, plasma concentration versus time profile, you people have written down. There you identify different regions in the plasma concentration, okay, such as minimum effective concentration, maximum safe concentration, or maximum safe limits, or whatever you can call it as. Okay, so the region lying between the effective range and the safe range, okay, this can be called as therapeutic window. Is it clear? Yes. And so usually it is considered as, that's one more factor, usually it's considered as is the ones with the narrow therapeutic index or the narrow therapeutic window. The window itself is quite narrow. In case of such drugs, what will happen is, okay, such drugs are considered as poor candidates for sustained release. Please note down. Okay. Okay, drugs with narrow therapeutic windows are usually considered as drugs which are unsuitable for formulating a sustained release formulation. So drugs which broader, what you can call it as therapeutic window or the therapeutic index, are considered as more suitable drugs for what you can call it as sustained release formulation. So drugs which have got a narrow therapeutic window are considered as poor candidates whereas drugs which have got broad therapeutic window are the right candidates for sustained release or fabrication of sustained release dosage form. Okay, so next factor is, as I told you, ionization, pKa, and aqueous solubility. We have already discussed about aqueous solubility. Okay, what should be the aqueous solubility? Okay, drugs which are quite soluble. Yes, drugs should have a good aqueous solubility, and I also discussed what you mean by aqueous solubility earlier also. Yes, absorption also we discussed. Yes, and drugs which are, for example, when it comes to absorption, I just told you, drugs which are soluble and are unionized or getting absorbed from the small intestine or from the gastrointestinal tract. That is one what you can call it as thing what everybody has to remember. Drug which is present in the soluble form and in the unionized form are the only what you can call it as moieties that can get absorbed. Okay, so how, to what extent a drug is solubilized, okay, or what you can call it as a drug is solubilized is determined by aqueous solubility. And second thing is, to what extent it is ionized or unionized is determined by what you can call it as a pKa value of the drug. So there are, as I told you, two kinds of drugs we have already identified. And at the beginning only, I just told you, most of the drugs what you encounter are organic molecules. I think I told you this. Most of the drugs what you are swallowing every day people take a number of drugs, starting from paracetamol, it may be, or antiemetics. Okay, whatever it is, most of them are organic molecules. That's why organic chemistry is such a big application chemistry. Is it clear? So most of them are organic molecules. 80 to 90% of the molecules are organic molecules. Okay, and in those it may be belonging to any one of the category. One, it is either they may be an acid or it may be a base. That also I think I told you. Is it clear? And also we went one step ahead telling you that, okay, what you can call it as acids remain unionized in the stomach, whereas bases remain unionized in the intestine. That also I think I told you. So this is one reason why we always tell indirectly that acids are well absorbed from the stomach, whereas bases are well absorbed from the intestine. Is it clear?
Without ionizing, how can it absorb in stomach, sir?
For example, yes, many of the drugs you can take. Okay, either you take ketoprofen or forget about the salt form. Okay, take for some of the wonderful drugs such as what you can call it as thiopental. Okay, thiopental is, again, I just gave an example of thiopental because it is again a drug which has got a poor solubility. Okay, many of them are BCS class 2, as you know. Okay, many of them are lipid soluble. They are not what you can call it as water soluble. Or what I mean to say lipid soluble is that, okay, whenever you add it into water, okay, they are not getting ionized. For example, yes, you see certain drugs, for example, as you told, it is water soluble drugs. You just take some examples. Okay, it may be, for example, something like, okay, diclofenac sodium. It may be water soluble to certain extent. Okay, it will get into water, it will get ionized. That is what you mean to say. Am I correct? And it will get absorbed. This is what you are understanding. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes or no? Take the other scenario where the drug may not be water soluble. Okay, take for example, ketoprofen is one such example. Okay, take an example of any CNS drug. Give an example of CNS drug. Thiopental is also an example of a CNS molecule. Just refer.
Dopamine.
Okay, why I'm not giving the example of phenytoin. Why? I'll tell you the reason. Okay, because phenytoin is available as phenytoin sodium, and nihal metal phenytoin sodium, being a sodium salt, it may dissolve in water, and that's the reason it will get absorbed. Okay, take some other drugs, for example, diazepam itself you can take, okay, which is not a salt form. But still, once somebody swallows it, within minutes, I think it may not take hours also, you can see diazepam levels in your brain. See, there are good number of molecules, for example. That's why I told you most of the organic molecules are either poor acids or poor bases. Many of them are not readily soluble in water. Okay, are you able to understand? Yes?
Yes, sir.
So in spite of that, what I mean to say is they get absorbed. Okay, some of them, the bioavailability is 100%. Okay, in spite of them being poorly soluble, absorption is happening. Are you able to understand? Within, for example, fraction of what you can call it as hours, you can see the brain level of these drugs. So the mechanism that underlying all this is known as passive diffusion. Are you able to understand? Passive diffusion is a process where the drug comes in contact with the biological membrane and it diffuses passively many a time.
Lipophilic drugs kala
Yes.
sir idu?
Yes, lipophilic also. But what will happen is drug will get into solution. The solubility of the drug is very less. The soluble form of the drug will get absorbed. That's what will happen. Okay. And once, for example, what will happen is the drug keeps on getting into solution or the GI fluid, and whatever drug is there in the soluble form in the GI fluid will get absorbed. It's a chain reaction. This process is. Are you able to understand? So generally what will happen is drug, the thumb rule is drug in the soluble form which is unionized is likely to get absorbed. This is a thumb rule. So the drug gets into solution into your GI fluid. From the GI fluid, the absorbed form of the drug is absorbed. Okay. And then what will happen is more amount of drug will get into solution. Are you able to understand? It is just like a suspension. Okay. Once you swallow anything, okay, you tablet or whatever it is, it will form a suspension. It forms a suspension or a dispersion. Okay. And in the dispersion or the suspension, what will happen? There is something called continuous phase. There is something called dispersed phase. Okay. In the continuous phase, what will happen is, okay, this is all physical pharmaceutics actually. In the continuous phase, what will happen is drug has a certain solubility, which we term as aqueous solubility. So drug whichever there in the soluble form will get absorbed. And what will happen is next step is once the soluble form of the drug is getting absorbed, the continuous phase, what will happen is the concentration of the drug in the continuous phase drops. So next step what will happen is whichever drug is suspended will get into solution.
Yes.
And the drug concentration what will happen is in the gastric media. For example, you are trying to dissolve ketoprofen. Ketoprofen, somebody has swallowed ketoprofen. Okay. Or any acidic drug for that matter. What will happen is, yes, ketoprofen may get into solution. Okay, in the stomach. So drug which is present in the soluble form will get absorbed. But ketoprofen will be present as a dispersion in the stomach, which will again get into solution. So whichever gets into solution is getting absorbed. That is the thumb rule. Okay, so the general rule below this is that drug which is there in the unionized and the soluble form is getting absorbed. Okay, so generally what will happen is drug which is in the soluble form and the unionized form will get absorbed. And the next is how much of drug is present in the soluble form? That is a question always. Okay, so that's the reason we always tell that yes, and how much of drug is present in the ionized or the unionized form. Okay, that is what will determine the extent of absorption. Okay, so in the stomach what will happen is most of the acidic drugs remain unionized. Okay, and that's the reason we always tell, okay, acidic drugs are absorbed from the stomach. Most of the acidic drugs generally are absorbed from the stomach or the upper part of the, what you can call it as intestine. okay, in the upper part of the intestine, whereas what you can call it as the basic drugs are absorbed from the lower part of the intestine. Is it clear? Okay. To what extent, for example, okay, this ratio between ionized and the unionized fraction, okay, is determined by two terms actually. One is the pK value of the drug, and the second is the prevalent pH. Are you able to understand? Yes? Okay. These are the two that determines what you can call it as the proportion of unionized to the ionized drug. So these are nothing big. These equations are nothing big. These are simple acid-base equations which I've already encountered, which I've already come across. Okay. For the acidic drugs, you can see there on the slide, pH is equal to pH minus pKa. Okay, this factor pH minus pKa will give you the ratio of the log ionized to unionized fraction. And at the same time, the same pH in case of the basic drugs, okay, pH minus pKa is equal to log ionized by ionized. Unionized by ionized. So this only the ratio will interchange. Okay, that's the only difference. That is how we have to remember. For acidic drugs, it is ionized by unionized, whereas for the basic drugs, it is unionized by ionized. Is it clear? So, most important is we are trying to figure out what you can call it as the extent of ionization. That is what we are trying to figure out. Okay. So, in the stomach, how is the scenario is that most of the acidic drugs remain unionized in the stomach. That's what is the general or the thumb rule. Or as on the contrary, in case of basic drugs, most of the basic drugs will remain unionized in the lower part of the intestine. And this is the reason behind me telling or anybody telling acidic drugs are well absorbed from the stomach and basic drugs are well absorbed from the intestine. So next is, that is what, as I told you, the extent of absorption of the drug is influenced by the ionization of the drug or the degree of ionization, whatever you can call it as, which in turn depends on three factors, as I told you. Yes, pH of the absorption site, pK value of the drug, and the last is aqueous solubility. Okay, this is the main thing. And usually we know that most of the acidic drugs, the soluble, when you look at the solubility, what will happen is they are poorly soluble in the acidic environment. Though, for example, yes, we always tell that acidic drugs are well absorbed from the stomach, and for the basic drugs, it's vice versa also. Okay, the solubility in the intestine is poor, which is supposed to be the site of absorption for the basic drugs. Example of acidic drugs, you can take any of the acidic drugs, starting from aspirin. You can take any drug, aspirin, diclofenac, all the NSAIDs will come under this category. Okay, when it comes to basic drugs, any of the basic drugs, for example, strychnine hydrochloride, brucine hydrochloride, venlafaxine hydrochloride, all this will come, amphetamine, all this will come as basic drugs which are well absorbed from the intestine, on the lower part of the intestine. So I've also given this. What is the pH prevalent in different part of the GI tract also I've given. So this is the pH that is prevalent. In the stomach, the pH is around 1.2. In the duodenum, the pH is 5.5. In the proximal colon, the pH is 7.5. In the distal colon, it is around 6.8. This is how it is. Okay. And see here, this is, for example, what you can call it as how an acid or a basic drugs will be there in the solution form. Okay. Yes. For example, an acidic drug, this is a pictorial representation which tells you on one axis put the solution pH, that is on what you can call it as the x-axis is the solution pH, or in the y coordinate, it is a drug pH, like where they may remain acidic, this combination, all that is pointed out. So usually I've mentioned the last statement, as you can see. Yes, acidic drugs are absorbed from the stomach and basic drugs are absorbed from the intestine. That's the only thing what most of you have to remember. The reason behind that is, in entry coating, what will happen is, for example, entry coating is a one, for example, above pH 5, it is going to dissolve. Is it clear? Yes. So there are different polymers, in fact, which have got a threshold pH of different. Okay. Entry coating is, for example, something like if we are making use of cellulose acetylate, okay, or shellac, the coating is going to dissolve around 5. So at pH 5, what will happen is, most of the acidic drugs, okay, once they're dissolved, they're rapidly absorbed. Okay, somewhere in the duodenal region, that's a place of absorption. Are you able to understand? Yes, it need not happen exactly in the stomach. Okay, anything above pH 7, for example, that is what I told you. Okay, yes. So in the upper part of the small intestine, okay, that is a place where most of the acidic drugs will get absorbed. Whereas in case of basic drugs, it is somewhere closer to lower part of the small intestine. Okay, something, there's a classical case study. For example, acidic drugs such as what you can call it as aspirin. You need not go into so much of depth. For example, I've just picked up an example of aspirin. Okay, how it remains ionized and unionized. That's what is a thing. For example, aspirin has got a pK value of 3.4, and the stomach pH, for example, in the stomach, what happens is, stomach, for example, as you can see here, the stomach pH is somewhere around 1.4, and the proportion of what you can call it as ionized to unionized species is something like this. You can see here, this is what will happen, the real scenario. Okay, the proportion of ionized to unionized, for example, you can see there it is 1:100. That is for, there is only one ionized molecule when compared to 100 unionized molecule of aspirin. That's what will happen. So in the stomach, what will happen is, generally you can see that the extent of unionized molecules are relatively more. Almost 99% is what you can call it as unionized. Okay, this is the only reason why I'm telling you that. Okay, because it is 99% unionized, we always tell that they are absorbed from the stomach or the duodenum region. That is the reason we tell, okay, because it is 99% of it is unionized. Okay, that's the reason why we tell acidic drugs are absorbed from the stomach. That's the only reason, not because of the solubility. As one of you told, it's a solubility. Okay, it's mainly determined by extent of ionization. That is what is seen by this. Okay, the ionized to unionized species. Okay, whereas one more example is there. Okay, this you need not worry about. So this is something, a pictorial absorption of aspirin. That's what will happen, how it remains ionized and how it will remain unionized. Okay, what will happen in the stomach, what may happen in the intestine. So in the stomach, mainly it is present as what you can call it as non-ionized or unionized species, whereas in the intestine, it will be present as the ionized species. That's what will happen. Okay, and so that's the reason we always tell that. Okay, codeine is one more example. Okay, how this, for example, it is only to tell you that how this well-known equation, as in Anderson-Hasselbalch equation, works. Okay, how it determines what you can call it as. There's a slides only to tell you how the, what you can call it as, the extent of ionization and ionization or unionization is determined by the two factors. One is the pH and the other is pKa. How these two factors are going to determine the extent of ionization. That is how, that is what is shown with the examples here. Okay, so codeine is a weak base, and in the stomach what is happening is, as you can see there, okay, the proportion of this, the ratio of unionized to ionized species is, so this is the amount of ionized species here. Okay, you can see here to what extent the calculation, looking at the calculation, you should be able to tell. Okay, based on the pK. pK is 7.9, pH of the stomach is somewhere around, I rounded it up, telling that it's 1.9. so what's happening? Okay, so every what you call it as one unionized molecule, this is what 10 lakhs ionized molecules are there of codeine. Is it clear? And so this is the reason why codeine is absorbed from the, little codeine is absorbed from the from the stomach, and more what you can call it as codeine will be absorbed from the small intestine. So this is an example where, for example, being a basic drug, it is absorbed from the intestine. So this is a calculation just to show, okay, how the interplay between pH and pK determines extent of limit of what you can call it as aqueous solubility. Next is, we saw the pH, we saw the pKa. Next is what should be the solubility. And in the beginning, I think I told you which kind of drugs are suitable for what you can call it as developing a sustained release dosage form. And I think I told you that drugs which are uniformly absorbed through the whole gastrointestinal tract are well suited to be candidates for sustained release dosage form. So one more factor which determines absorption is also what you can call it as aqueous solubility. So the compounds with low, generally talking, these are all the general rules, as you can see. Compounds with low aqueous solubility have got inherently sustaining effect, and I've just given you some of the examples. Example is digoxin, griseofulvin, and salicylamide. These are some examples which are there. Okay, so this or any drug, for example, you can take of BCS class 2. Most of them are what you can call it as aqueous solubility is poor. So what is the lower limit of solubility? Okay, the lower limit of solubility, the second point which I put, is very important for all of you. Please remember this. This is a thumb rule. Okay, the lower limit of solubility for any drug to be fabricated into sustained release dosage form is 0.1 mg per ml. How do you define solubility? Anybody? The amount of the substance that dissolves in 100 ml of the solvent can be called as solubility. Okay, now what, for example, what can be the limit of solubility now, according to this, what I have pointed out?
0.1 mg per m.
Although if you define the solubility as 100 ml, automatically you always tell that the limit of solubility is 10 mg. Is it clear now? Are you able to understand? Yes? The solubility of any drug should be 10 mg per 100 ml or 0.1 mg per ml. If at all it is below that, it is difficult to develop a diffusional system. Okay,